It's a billion-dollar business that exists on 10 blocks on an island in Manhattan. It's such a localized business, and you can't do this job anywhere but New York City.
Howdy, y'all. I'm Elizabeth Gore. Welcome to The Big Idea from Yahoo Finance, the show that navigates the world of small business and entrepreneurship. All businesses start with one light bulb moment, and I'm going to take you on a journey with America's entrepreneurs. As the co-founder of the small business funding platform, Hello Alice, it has always been my mission to help ensure entrepreneurs have the tools they need to live the American dream. We're going to get between the spreadsheets with these operators to flow from their smallest failures to their biggest successes. So let's cowboy up. Today's big idea question is, how do I monetize my passion? Our industry focus will be theater. I have zero artistic capabilities. That's why I relish the theater. You will find me anytime I am in New York on Broadway soaking up creativity. From the Orpheum Theater in San Francisco to the Wortham Theater in Houston, I will be the first in line to see the amazing work of these creative entrepreneurs. And yes, they are entrepreneurs. Joining me today to talk about the creative economy is Greg Nobile. Greg is the CEO of Seaview Productions, a New York-based production company that's made its mark on New York City by producing hit shows like Good Night and Good Luck with George Clooney, the Tony Award-winning stereophonic and upcoming Broadway musical Queen of Versailles, starring Christian Chenoweth. Amazing. Growing up a fan of theater, Greg turned his love for the industry into a full-time career. He prides himself on providing bold and disruptive storytelling for audiences and is a true example of someone who turned his passion into profit. Let's talk to Greg. Greg.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I'm so excited you're here because, as everyone who knows me knows, I love creativity. I love Broadway. I love music, and I can't do any of it. So I love showing up and supporting.
Yeah.
But let's back up and hear how you got into this in the first place.
Yeah, I'd love to. I just came out of the womb as a theater kid. I was singing and dancing from, the time I was walking and talking. And for so many years, I thought I wanted to be on stage. I think so many people who work in the theater, their first passion was being on stage. And that was such an access point for so many people. But I sort of wised up early on in my life and realized that, while I was maybe doing fine in my local community theater productions, that might be the end of my journey on stage. And I was lucky to learn about that there was other jobs involved in the theater from a young age. And I learned that there was this job called producing. And I got really excited about the idea that there was a way to sort of be involved in the making of the show, but not necessarily having to be on stage.
So explain to all of us who love to sit in the audience what producers do behind the scenes.
Yeah. So we sort of view ourselves as like the CEO of the company. So each show, each production operates as its own independent LLC. And we, as the producer, are sort of the decision maker for all things creative, business. So we're responsible for raising the money from outside partners and investors and co-producers. We're responsible for finding the theater, controlling the marketing, running the day-to-day operations, managing the budget, sort of all things. And of course, there's like a huge amount of partners and people that we bring into running the operation. But, the buck stops with the producer who's in charge of overseeing all of the departments, creative and business.
Well, our big idea question today is, how do I monetize my passion? And I mean, when I talk to you, just light up about this show that's coming or this production and so on. And when did you say, okay, I'm going to actually build a business out of this passion?
Yeah. I came from a long line of entrepreneurs. My grandfather was a typewriter salesman for IBM in New Haven, and he sold typewriters door to door. And he had 8 kids, and he and his wife, my grandmother, loved going to the theater, and he would save his literal nickels from selling typewriters and take my grandmother to all the world premieres in New Haven at the Schubert Theater, where they all used to, Rodgers and Hammerstein shows used to start. And then my father owned an antique business that turned into a home renovation business that he had some success with. And so it was always around the idea of commerce. And at a young age, I learned that there was this job that was both commerce and art, and you could sort of help artists realize their dreams. And foolishly, when you talk about monetizing passion, foolishly, I thought, well, being an actor really seems unsustainable, but being a producer is totally sustainable because you're on the money side. And certainly, as in any job in the creative sector, it's just as just as hard to navigate the complexities and the risk of being in the creative sector. But, that was my entry point was, well, this is much more of a stable way to be involved in theater making.
Well, at Seaview, I mean, anyone who sees you now, they say good night and good luck. And it was exciting at your new space because you had Angry Allen with John Krasinski there, which is amazing. But, overnight success is not a thing, right? Tell me how you built towards being the kind of behemoth creative that you are now.
Well, once
you can use that behemoth. I was
gonna. I blush. But once I knew that being a producer was what I wanted to do, I knew that I had to get to New York, and that was sort of first and foremost. And I grew up a really bad student. I maintained a C average.
Me too.
Yeah, just to stay in for me, it was the theater.
Don't tell people
program.
at Yahoo Finance that I couldn't do any
we're
kind
okay.
of math.
We're okay. Look at you now. It's all good. It was that senior year in high school thing, and everyone's like applying, or junior, whenever it happens. And I was like, I'm not going to go to school. I'm going to do my own thing. And then I had that, last minute, oh my gosh, I'm doing the wrong thing. Everyone else is going off to school and I'm not. And I didn't get into any of this. So I started applying for schools last minute. I was such a bad student. I didn't get into any of them, including like the local state university wouldn't take me. And one program took me in New York, and I came to an arts administration program on the Upper East Side in Manhattan. And I got into this program and I realized, oh yeah, I still actually hate being at school, and I'm not good at being at school, and this isn't a good use of my time. And I dropped out 4 weeks into it. And it was, for me, school was so useful in getting me to the city and getting me here.
So that was a path.
It was totally a path to get me into the city. And, this is it's a $1 billion business that exists on 10 blocks on an island in Manhattan. It's such a localized business, and you can't do this job anywhere but New York City. But it got me here. And then once I dropped out, I started selling suits at Bloomingdale's. I was a writer's assistant. I was walking dogs. I was selling T-shirts at intermission at the theater that we now run, which was formerly the Tony Kaiser Theater.
Amazing.
I worked intermissions and sold merchandise and just odd jobbed around enough to put rent together.
When you were sitting there, and because I want to talk about what you just built, selling T-shirts at intermission, did you ever look up and look around and think, this could be mine at some point?
Never once.
Never once.
Never once.
Tell me about that. I mean, you're a landlord now. You've built out this beautiful space. Tell me.
Yeah. Well, when I talk about that localized business sector, we do exist on 10 blocks, and there's only 41 Broadway theaters. And the Broadway real estate is really hard to come by. And the great news is the business is incredibly healthy, and the theaters are all full. There was a time in the 80s where you would walk through Broadway and most of the theaters were dark and empty, and old marquees of shows that closed long before were still on the building. And that's not the case. There's far more shows than there are buildings available for the shows. So the theater owners, of which there are about 3 or 4, essentially run air traffic control about what shows can come in and out, and limited
You said
runs.
earlier it's almost more of a real estate business than a creative business.
For the theater owners, it certainly is. They're in the business of getting shows in and getting shows out. And of course, we're all sort of on the same team, and they all want to make sure that shows run as long as they can and be as profitable as they can. But they also have a long wait list of people who want to come into the theaters next. And what we realized was, as independent producers who were financing development and taking a lot of risk on creating product, we would have a chokehold in our process when we couldn't control our own distribution. And what became a huge priority for the company was finding some way to loosen that up so we could be a little bit more in control of our own destiny.
What's interesting, just to pick this apart for a second, I think small business owners, they're you almost talked about it earlier as a hamster wheel. You're in your lane, you're doing your business. But I love the idea of floating above your business for a second and thinking, are there other problems or opportunities that I can tackle within my sector that unlocks more for my own lane?
Definitely.
Right? But when you're that busy, though, I mean, when did you decide, okay, I'm producing all these shows, but I'm gonna take a right turn for a second and do this? Like, how did you even have the time to think that through?
It's been about 1.5 years ago where the business started to get into a place where, fortunately, the phone was ringing. We have a great team.
Chenoweth coming down the pike, which is super, for Queen of Versailles, for example.
She begins in October.
Amazing.
So we have really strong artistic relationships, and we have a great team of producers at the office that everything would be impossible without. And once we sort of strengthened the operation of our team, which is now about 10 people or so, I was able to sort of step away from every detail of the day-to-day producing and sort of, as you say, zoom out a little bit and say what else is needed in the sector and where is there room for, white space, as it were, for us to sort of innovate a little bit more. And this felt like a real opportunity.
Yeah, it sounds like, it was a calculated risk, but it was built on a foundation that took time. And you mentioned your team.
Yeah.
Talk for me a second on that, because I think business owners, there are some things that only you as the founder can do, but there's also the ability to rise up and hire the team around you. Can you talk through that process a little bit?
Yeah. When I started this company 11 years ago, I didn't call it Greg Noble Productions on purpose. My name is not anywhere on any of the shows that we do. It was a company called Seaview, which is a street that, I grew up on. And it was about, galvanizing a team of people who shared the same belief that audiences could be younger, tickets could be more accessible, the art could be more exciting. We could see big stars on Broadway. And what we've been able to do is galvanize this group of amazing producers, business people, marketers, data people who can come around the table and all have a shared vision. But when it comes to making decisions about the shows we're doing, there's no walls in our offices. We're all on the same phone calls. It's a real team effort. And, we've been really inspired by companies like A24 that, are real brands. And over time, we're starting to invest in the brand of Seaview. We're investing in our own data. We're investing in our branding. We're investing in investor experiences. And hopefully one day there's going to be a point in time, whether you're coming to our venue or you're just seeing one of our shows in one of the Schubert houses on Broadway or something like that, you say, oh, that's a Seaview show.
Again, I mean, congrats on all the success on the ones you have chose. What's the science or gut or whatever of what you all do choose to invest in, put your time behind, put your name behind?
Yeah. I think the scariest and best bit of the business is there's literally no science, which I think is true of so many sectors, right?
That's entrepreneurship in general,
exactly.
right?
But it's gut. It's gut instinct. It's creative instinct. It's relationship based in so many ways. We take really big bets on artists that we believe in. And, once we have sort of repeat business with an artist that we love and they call up and they say, I have this idea, there's artists that we just want to take that ride with, even if it feels a little crazy at the jump. And so it's about, sometimes there's big swing ideas where you're like, gosh, this really doesn't make sense. And then there's some things that really do make sense that are, when George Clooney decides to make his Broadway debut, it's a no-brainer, right?
Right.
That's just about how do you make that the best possible experience for, extraordinary creator like that. And then there's other things like Slave Play or Stereophonic that aren't star-driven shows that, you feel like they're going to be a risk, and those risks pay off. And then there's, all the shows in between where those risks don't pay off, but, you've believed in the work, and hopefully you get to that closing night having it been a success or a failure and still believing in the art that got put on stage.
All right, Greg, hold that thought. We have to take a quick break and we'll be right back on The Big Idea. Howdy, y'all. Welcome back to The Big Idea. I'm here with Greg Noble, talking theater. All right, so obviously you've had a passion for theater since you were a kid, and now as the big boss, how do you balance your creative excitement and then also how to actually turn a profit?
Yeah, it's the hardest decision to make because there's so many shows that we see or evaluate or read and just love creatively. But if we don't see a path to how to monetize, what the art is, and, what that means to us is, can we find an audience for it? And everything we're focused on right now is can we make an event? So it doesn't have to be necessarily, oh, well, there's X big, huge star in it, so thereby we're down to do it, or that's the only thing to do. It's just the opposite. Actually, we're always looking for things that are non-star driven for so many reasons. But to us, and particularly in New York in this moment, like a coffee shop, a donut shop, a cookie shop has to be an event. You need lines around the block. It has to be a social media frenzy to get attention in the market. And so if we don't see a way to really create a capital E event out of a show, we just can't do it. And that doesn't mean that I'm not going to go 7 times and see it as a fan, because I still feel very blessed that I still have the passion to go and see theater as a fan. But that doesn't mean it's for us to join as a producer.
I do think that's a beautiful thing. I mean, you're not creating widgets.
Right.
Right? I mean, I walk out of some of your plays and I am moved. I'm thinking about them for weeks,
Thank
right?
you.
They pop back into my head. And I don't think we see the ones that didn't work out, maybe. Yeah. And so I'm curious, we come on the show and we talk a lot about failures, and we call them our dirty unicorns.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious if you can share, one with us. I'm sure you've only had one failure in your life.
Oh yeah, only one. Yeah.
That you learned from and that our business owners could learn from.
We were talking earlier about, failure is it's everything. There's the micro failures every day, and then there's the major failures that we learn from. And one of my many dirty unicorns would be early on in my career, there's sort of a part of our business called co-producing, which is a great way to get started. And effectively, you're not the liability partner on a show, but you go and raise a little bit of money and your name goes above the title. And if the show wins a Tony Award, you get to run on stage, which is why at the awards you see, mounds of people sort of running up. And oftentimes that group of people who are champions of the show, I sort of consider them like the board of directors of the show. The first thing I did, which sort of got our company off to the right start, was co-produce a show called The Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder. So I signed on to co-produce this show. I raised a bit of money. We were successful in raising the money, and the show became an unlikely success. And it won a Tony Award, and it recouped its investment. And I was 21 years old at that time, and I was totally hooked, and I was still working all these odd jobs, and all I wanted to do was produce full time. And I was so eager to get the next win on the board that I felt like I needed to stay in the conversations, right? And I joined a number of productions right after that I wasn't passionate about, but felt like the right business ideas. And we had, as a company, like 3 big failures right after this, but not following that creative instinct has been a really guiding light. And those like losses have been so helpful to say, actually, if it feels like the right commercial idea, it's actually usually not, right? It's those big swing ideas.
So don't chase the shiny object.
Yeah, don't chase the shiny object that feels obvious, right? Because when we look at sort of the last couple of years, like the show that we had nothing to do with, but was one of my favorites last year, Maybe Happy Ending, is a love story about 2 robots. And it's based on no source material. It is unknown writers. It's an amazing director, great cast, but like nothing obvious about it. And it opened in the fall and ran all the way through, and now is doing huge growth, right? Like everything that Hamilton, right? Wrapping history. So finding those moments and not chasing the things that feel like, well, we have to do this because it's a huge brand name, have been some of my biggest, many dirty unicorns.
I appreciate that because I think when we start to taste a little bit of success, first you run so fast to the next thing versus you said earlier something I really appreciated of reflecting both on the wins and the mistakes and taking a second, sitting in it and just seeing the why and giving yourself a minute. I think that's really important. I want to go back to your time because I think that's the hardest thing we have as small business owners. And how do you categorize your time related to finding the next thing? So I see reviewing scripts, seeing what's coming, managing the one right in front of you that's happening, and now you also have a real estate business. I mean, how do you prioritize your time? How can we learn from that?
Yeah, I would like to learn from someone else. So I'm going to go back and listen to a lot of your podcasts because I'm sure there's better wisdom out there than I have. Right now, we're in a huge growth moment. So the days are stacked. There's no downtime, and there's not a real strategy, just to be totally honest, about how to manage the day. The most important thing as a team that we try to stay really focused on is the shows that are running. It's so easy once you get the show up to say, we've opened, the reviews are what they are, I'm going to get on to the next thing.
Right.
But actually all the work, which is true of any business, right, is like what is in the running of the thing. And I know that that's not my strength. So I've built a team of people who are amazing about digging in and how we manage the show and making sure that if we have a star in the show, they really looked after, the cast feels looked after, the building, we have people on the team, including myself, who know everybody's name in the building. So when we go in, it feels like a welcome place. We're building company culture inside of each building because each show operates like its own little business,
universe.
Its own universe that exists inside of those theaters. And so, we've built a team of people who are amazing and so much better at me than doing the day-to-day of maintaining the show. And it's all like a restaurant business or anything else. It's all in the ketchup packets, right? Like making sure that we're maximizing cost each week over week is really key.
Right.
And it allows me to sort of, look for the next big opportunity while making sure that, the artists and the companies and the audiences that we're working with at that current moment feel looked after.
I actually think you're doing better than you think because you've built a great team to do what's really critical about maintaining, but you're giving yourself time that only you have the creative instinct to find the next. So I think that's great.
Thank you.
So my last question for you is I just can't help. I just love the story that you were in this theater selling T-shirts and now you're running the theater and you were at concessions. I mean, So you walk up to someone who's now working for you in concessions, and they have this dream to start their own creative company. I mean, what is your advice to the person standing where you did?
I would say track down your idols and ask them to coffee.
Ooh.
Just getting people to sit down with you, and I'd say the part B of that, number 2, is don't leave that meeting without asking for another meeting. Do you have a friend or someone else I can meet in the world? And 3 is trusting that gut, like we were talking about creatively earlier. Just understanding that your instinct, or the first instinct, is probably right, always holds true.
Awesome.
Been so fun to build a company that has that's a manifestation of the brand, right? Because we've gotten completely obsessed with culture inside of those buildings, right? When we rent a building from another theater owner, it's their crews, and we can be responsible for what's on stage, but we can't take any responsibility for what happens in the audience experience. And we have great theater owning partners all through the city, and they do an amazing job. But we have something really special, which is we're a 300-seat theater. We're not a 1,100-seat Broadway theater. So we can actually work to make all 300 of those audiences member feel really looked after. And we've over-invested in staffing in the building to make it really feel like it's a completely hospitable experience. We have a bar that stays open hours after the show. We have come on anytime, please. Call Bar Petra. It's great. And so what's been great about all that is we spent a lot of time with the staff, and they've already started to feel a real ownership over how we run the building, how the audience experiences our building. And we spend a lot of time getting together for drinks and hangs with the team, and I've gotten to know so many of them personally, and a few of them have started to pull me aside to say, hey, I'm writing this show, I'm directing the show, I have a producing interest, I want to raise money for someone else's show, would you talk to me about it? And when I got into this business, I was sending emails and cold emails to people, and because again, such a small business and such a communal business, every single person I sent emails to said yes. Amazing. And said, yes, I'll meet you for a cup of coffee.
So now you're paying that forward.
And as much as humanly possible, trying to meet, particularly for those who are on our team, and trying to nurture. And as we build and expand the company, it's my hope that someone who is selling t-shirts for us can, come into the fold one day and be producing shows alongside us. So
I love that.
That's my hope.
Greg, you're a blessing. I can't wait to keep watching all your shows, see your new space, drink all the tequila in your bar
please,
later.
Anytime.
And thanks for teaching us how to monetize our loves and passions.
Thanks
you're
for
amazing.
having me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
At the end of each episode, I like to give a shout out to a small business who is doing amazing work. So today, I'd like to shout out one of Greg and Seaview's favorites, Body Work by Molly Kearns. Molly is a wellness specialist with over 30 years experience working with performers across a number of Broadway shows and TV series. Check her out at massagemolly.com. Thank you, Greg, for coming on the show, and thank all of you for joining us. We hope you've learned a lot. This has been The Big Idea from Yahoo Finance. Please make sure to scan the QR code below to follow Yahoo Finance Podcast, or check us out at The Big Idea wherever you get your podcasts. You can also come say howdy to me at any of my social channels at Elizabeth Gore USA. I'm Elizabeth Gore, and as my grandmother always used to say, hold your head up high and give 'em hell. See you next time.
This content was not intended to be financial advice and should not be used as a substitute for professional financial services.